I hate to say yes, but in a sense, I think it is. I think women are very used to working collaboratively. Again, because we've often been volunteers. That's the way we've become engaged in our community. Sometimes it's through our schools, with our children. Sometimes it's some other motivator. But in any case, because we've been volunteers and we've been on the ground, I think we tend to work well with each other.
And greetings, everybody, and welcome to Buzz for Good, where we talk all things nonprofit, the people they serve, and the good they do. And so far this February, we have been focusing on Black History Month and some impactful nonprofits that work to preserve the historical legacy and foster social justice for African Americans. March is Women's History Month. And so on today's show, I'm going to feature the work of two women's groups in Southwest Virginia, the Roanoke Women's Foundation, and 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley. Collectively, through what are known as giving circles, these two organizations are arguably having the biggest impact on nonprofits in Roanoke and the New River Valley. One question in particular we discuss is, what is it about women that make them uniquely suited to creating and sustaining these philanthropic organizations? Or, put another way, men, where you at? I am Michael Hemphill, creator and host of both this radio show and the TV show Buzz that airs Wednesdays on Blue Ridge PBS, where in each episode we feature a nonprofit organization and provide it with a marketing makeover by a member of the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke. And you can watch our show at buzzforgood.com. That's Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4, good.com. You can also stay connected with us on our socials. That's Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube, all at Buzz for Good. This Wednesday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. on Blue Ridge PBS, we have a new episode of Buzz that is premiering, featuring not just 8 different nonprofits, but also 5 amazing video producers who generously donate their time and talent, helping nonprofits achieve more buzz. Talent like Ryan Hunt, who shared the mission of the nonprofit Compress and Shock Foundation, or Jamie Neighbors, owner of Boss Motion Picture Company, who helped the United Way of Roanoke Valley spread the word about the importance of COVID vaccinations. Also, Bruce C. Bryan, owner of 5 Points Creative, who provided the video buzz for the Virginia Institute of Autism, and who worked with Dan Morelli, who is the videographer for all of our Buzz TV shows, on a separate project featuring local environmental and agricultural project, aka LEAP. And then lastly, Bethany Teague, director of storytelling for the Click and Pledge Foundation, who shared the stories of the Renaissance Music Academy, Blacksburg Volunteer Rescue Squad, the Rescue Mission of Roanoke, and Salem Education Foundation. This episode will also be available on our YouTube channel at Buzz for Good. I want to thank our sponsors, Freedom First Credit Union, where people bank for good. That's freedomfirst.com, as well as Partners in Financial Planning, a Southwest Virginia-based financial management firm, partnersinfinancialplanning.com. Again, this week I got to visit with 2 women's funding organizations whose goal is to pool their members' individual gifts so that together they can make a far bigger impact in our communities. At the same time, there are notable differences in how the Roanoke Women's Foundation and 100 Plus Women Who Care of the New River Valley award their funds. And I also explore why women are more successful at building these foundations in my separate conversations with Mary Jean Levin, president of the Roanoke Women's Foundation, and Alexa Casey, a co-founder of 100 Plus Women Who Care in RV. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome here on Buzz for Good, Mary Jean Levin, who is president of the Roanoke Women's Foundation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Michael. And let me begin by thanking you for your commitment to nonprofits in this area. I know how long and how assiduously you support our nonprofits, and you believe, as does Roanoke Women's Foundation, that these are a source of great support for our community.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's been a joy I love nonprofits. I've been involved with them for about 20 years. And what I love about nonprofits is the diversity of missions that they seek to accomplish each and every day. And I know you see that over the course of all the different grant applications that Roanoke Women's Foundation gets every year. It's extraordinary the work that nonprofits do.
I completely agree.
And as I said in my intro, I personally think that there is no more impactful foundation in the Roanoke Valley than the Roanoke Women's Foundation. I mean, the amount of support that you provide each year, $300,000 plus to 5 to 10 different nonprofits. I mean, it's extraordinary. And so thank you for the work that you have done throughout the years. And your 2023 grant process begins March 1st. So
that's correct. That will, from our website, that will be the March 1st will be the opening date for access to the application, and it will close on March 31st. And the application process includes a letter of intent from any nonprofit organization in our target area, which is the cities of Roanoke and Salem, the counties of Botetourt, Craig, Franklin, Floyd, and Roanoke.
Wonderful. And we'll get to that full process here in a little bit as well. I wanted to start off, though, because I love how the names of organizations come about, right? And so Roanoke Women's Foundation, 3 words. Roanoke seems fairly self-explanatory. Your service area is Roanoke. And foundation is fairly self-evident as well. I mean, you're obviously providing funds to help a variety of different causes in the community. The women's part, I'm wondering how that came about.
Well, it's an interesting question because sometimes we're mistaken for being an organization that only funds projects for women, which is not the case.
Right.
I think it would be fair to say that it is largely because of the development of pooled collective giving organizations that particularly appealed to women as this became a model for giving, and that it fit the way women liked to give. Up to this point, I'd say, for more than 100 years, women have been involved in their communities in supporting nonprofits very much as volunteers, not so much as funders, having a lot of influence on family giving, but not on the large corporate giving. And so this model became something that appealed to women, and someplace in, I'm going to say the late 90s, early aughts, this became something that caught on. And there are now a large number of women's collective giving circles across the country. There are other organizations that are also collective giving that are not exclusively women, but that's sort of the way they got off the ground. And it became something that, rather than being something that was the side foundation of a corporation or a group of wealthy men, it was a group of women who were able to do this and saw the pooled giving model as something that they could thoroughly embrace.
Talk about the history of the Roanoke Women's Foundation in particular and how you came up with the model that you have for organizing and funding.
Well, we have 2 fabulous founders who are still very much engaged with the organization. And their story goes back a bit even more before what they started doing. What we sometimes refer to as the mothership of women's giving foundations is the Washington Women's Foundation in Seattle. That began, I believe, around 2000. I'm not sure of their founding date, but their founder gave presentations on how successful they had been and what they were doing in the Seattle and even in this throughout the state of Washington. And Jenny Jarrett, who is a generous woman in our community and has been a giver in many ways for a long time, was present at that meeting. and said, "Oh, this is a wonderful idea. This would be wonderful in Roanoke. I'm going to go back and see if we can't get something started." And she talked about it with a lot of people, including her very best friend, Candy Elliott. And Candy finally said, "I'm tired of you talking to me about it, and let's get started. Let's see what we can do." And they pulled together a small group of women who were very interested, became the board, and then that group expanded slightly into the original members. That was in 2005,
Okay.
2005. And that particular year, I think I can tell you exactly how much money they gave away in that 2005 year. It was $138,000.
Wow.
So they had more than 50 women
Okay.
who began that first year. Since then, we're now in our 19th year process, but in the 18 years of giving, we have given away $4,889,500.
Ooh. Bravo. Wow.
And we've given to 72 organizations. We've given 90 programs or projects. It's been a wonderful history, and the organization has generally grown year by year. We have had a couple of setbacks in the 2008 recession,
Sure.
in COVID, slight setbacks in our membership numbers, but our ability to give stems from our membership.
Well, and let's talk about that real quickly. So how does one become a member of the Roanoke Women's Foundation?
All you need to do is tell us you want to be. Well, there is another requirement. It's a fairly generous gift
Sure.
of $2,100
Per year.
per year.
Yep.
But this is a part of a pool, part of a collective.
Yeah.
And the impact that gift of any individual, when it's gathered with now almost 200 other women, is colossal. And that's the appeal of it.
Yes.
Because these are generally people who have been giving in the community, who are generous about that, but see that by pooling their money, they can make an even bigger impact. And it is about impact giving.
Right. So I was not a math major, but 200 women times $2,100 a year is over $400,000 in annual giving.
Yes. Now, the original model, because originally we started as a member of the Community Foundation Serving Western Virginia.
Yeah.
That's its current name. And the original model was the 2,000 was going into gifts, and the 100 was going for the costs of being an organization. And then the Community Foundation took a small portion out just for management purposes.
Right.
But in 2022, we became an independent 501c3. So we now have all of the costs of being an independent organization, but we're still giving $2,000, the $2,000 per member every year. That's our objective, is to see that that's the kind of money that we're giving away.
Yeah, so the foundation really only keeps $100 of every member's $2,100
Essentially,
contribution.
yes.
And that's just operate as a business.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And of course, we have more expenses now than we have in the past, and we haven't changed our amount in those intervening years. So that may change in the foreseeable future.
Right.
Slightly.
Yeah, I mean, for some organizations, a $2,000 contribution would have a tremendous impact. But for a lot of organizations that are in need of $30, $50, $75, $100,000 of a need, the $2,000 is nice, but being able to get a Roanoke Women's Foundation grant to fund that is such a huge moment for that nonprofit in a given year. So,
And our commitment is that our minimum gift is $30,000.
right.
So
You have to have a $30,000 need.
You have to have a need of $30,000. You have to have some proposal that appropriately would use $30,000. We don't have a maximum stated, but we have given grants in the $100,000 range. I think that's probably a bit of a stopping point, and usually, of course, very effective as well. So.
Right.
But you know when you apply, if you're funded, you're going to get a minimum of $30,000.
Yeah, so let's talk about the process. So I know that the application process opens March 1st, and nonprofits have until March 31st to submit a letter of intent, which is a somewhat simple process with a minimum need of $30,000.
Correct. And that's, I'm trying to think how to best phrase this. It's done in a process that is managed by a software program, answering the questions on there. And again, it doesn't open until March 1st, so you can't really study what the questions are until then, although we'd be happy to tell people what the questions are. And they're primarily about need, impact, sustainability.
Right.
And then that closes on March 31st. And then the Grants Committee of the Women's Foundation looks at all of those applications. We have a typical number of applicants, between 50 and 60, roughly, in recent years. And we know that we are going to have somewhat limited funds, even though they're generous, it still is a limitation, and that we probably will not be able to make more than 6 to 8 grants. So the first thing that happens with the Grants Committee is that they read and review all of those letters of intent and score them. We have a scoring system. It amounts to 100 points, Yeah. And they're divided by questions like need and sustainability and impact, which are the questions on the letter of intent, on the process. And from that, we then invite a number to make a phase 2 application that will be a bit more detailed. Will contain things like budgets and really detailed information about the organizations. And that's phase 2.
Right.
So you want to go on now? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me take a quick moment to reintroduce you here. So
Okay.
I'm here joined on Buzz for Good by Mary Jean Levin, who's the president of the Roanoke Women's Foundation. And we are learning about the history of the Roanoke Women's Foundation on this day, where we're really focusing on women's giving circles throughout our region. And so we were just talking about the letter of intent. That's due March 31st. There's a committee that reviews those 50 to 60 different letters of intent from different organizations. And then out of that is maybe, 15 to 20 or so?
15 to 20 is probably accurate.
Are invited
I'd
to
say,
phase 2.
Right,
Okay.
right. I think that's it. It does depend, and we don't hold ourselves to a specific number because some years it may be a smaller number, and also because organizations apply for differing amounts of money.
Yeah.
And there are years when everybody wants lots, and there are years when really they're applying with smaller expectations, and we say, well, we could do more of these because and we're all in favor of doing more.
Yeah.
In fact, that's probably one of the most important messages I can convey. We want to spend our money.
Yeah, right.
And that is, we want it to go to effective things that are working in our community. But again, we want to spend our money.
Yes, and you are very successful in doing that every year.
Yes.
More than 400,000 or so each year.
Well, it's
around.
been so far it's been between 350 and 400,000 in recent years, and we're working toward. We haven't crossed 200 members quite yet,
Okay.
but we're I think at 194 at the moment,
Wow.
and we are very hopeful this is the year that we're going to go across 200.
Great. So nonprofits would submit then, who are invited to do so, a phase 2 application, and then there's a site visit after
Correct.
that.
All of the organizations that go to phase 2 will have a site visit. They will be visited by a minimum of 2 members of the Grants Committee, who are members of the Women's Foundation. And one of those will be considered the lead visitor. So she'll be responsible for reporting back to the committee from the site visit, being kind of the guardian of the organization through the process. She'll be presenting to the membership the results that we've come up with at that point. And that will go back to the whole grants committee, which again will score the organizations in phase 2 in order to select a ballot that will go to the membership. And usually that's 7 to 10, and again, very much dependent on how much money we have available. Sure. So we will know how much money we have after our dues are paid, and that's the end of June that they're in. So then we say, okay, now we can do this. Right. In August, the grants committee will hold an open membership meeting at which all members may attend, and the reports will come back from all of the phase 2 organizations. The site visit leader will present a brief summary of the project proposal, and then after that meeting, the grants committee will meet again and painfully cut that list a little bit more so that the ballot will be a reasonable number
Sure.
of projects or programs, and then that will go to the membership the beginning of September.
And so that final ballot would have 6 to 10 different proposals, and then out of that, the full membership of almost 200 women will vote, and then it ranges, but 5 to 7 or 8 different proposals will be accepted and receive the Roanoke Women's Foundation grant.
Exactly. Now, of course, early on, we had a number of years when it was 2 or 3 or maybe 4 grants.
Right.
Now it's more, and that's another reason why we want more members, because the more members we have, the more capability we have
Sure.
to carry this through.
Right. Well, full disclosure, I am very familiar with this process, having applied actually the last 3 years for grant funding for the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke, which is my partner in producing our Buzz episodes. The first year was the very first year we started the TV show, and so we did not make it to phase 2, understandably, because we were still kind of a startup, and quite honestly, I probably wasn't really sure what we were doing that year either. The last 2 years, we've been very fortunate to get to the final ballot, and but and while sure there was some disappointment in not receiving a grant, when you look at those organizations that did receive grants, my stars, how do you argue with an organization that's helping the homeless, or an organization that is trying to provide artistic opportunities for low-income children? I mean, on and on and on. There are just so many wonderful causes that Roanoke Women's Foundation supports every year. Is there one in particular over your time with the foundation that particularly resonates with you?
Well, there are interesting things. First of all, I was on the grants committee for 6 years before I became vice president of the organization. So during that period, and 3 of them were in the leadership of the grants committee. So naturally, I saw a lot of them, and as we almost all do, fell in love with many of them. But interestingly enough, the beginning of this year, I asked, as part of our board retreat, the board to mention if they had 1 or 2 that they particularly loved. And there were several that really rose to the top. The Roanoke Refugee Resettlement Project that's managed by Commonwealth Catholic Charities was one that people found especially wonderful.
What was the funding for, do you recall?
It was actually for empowering refugee women as they were learning to adjust to American society. Many of them have come from societies where women are not as highly valued, or they are valued in the home but not beyond that, and yet many of these women have, of necessity, gone in or wanted to go into work to help their families financially. And this program was assisting them in that process, and assisting them in helping their children to adjust to American society as well. One that I happened to have been the lead visitor on that I did not even know existed was SERCAP, which is the Southeast Regional Community Assistance Project. SERCAP is headquartered in Roanoke, but it is an organization that covers multi-states in the Southeast. They are an agency that helps in being sure that American households have water and plumbing. Quite frankly, that's what it comes down to. I mean, surprisingly enough, there are many families and there are many households that don't have this.
It's sad we need a nonprofit to ensure that.
It is. Wow. Ultimately, the funding that we provided was used in Craig County, which is the poorest area of our service area, and we were thrilled to be able to do that. Wonderful. But it's a wonderful project, and people loved it. And it certainly have been others. I mean, there are some that are so much fun that we've done wonderful programs to help children's after school, especially middle school. After school programs, because that's an area where children fall into a gap between having after school child care and being quite old enough to be on their own, and yet needing help with homework, safety. And so we've done a good deal with that, and there's some wonderful after-school programs that several that we've funded over the years.
And we featured on our TV show Buzz, the West End Center, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Southwest Virginia.
Both of which we have funded at times. Yes.
Great organizations.
The exactly. Community Youth Program at St. John's, the Cafe Program, that's a really interesting one where they use training children in steel drum playing as a special focus of building teams. And I mean, there are just some wonderful things out there. Kids Soar is another one with a little bit younger population, but those are all ones that we've funded over the years.
Yeah. You know, you're talking about the process of going through your applications and awarding grants. It is such a collaborative, I might say, democratic process. It is definitely, everyone is involved with it. You're really trying to seek consensus amongst all of the members. And I'm wondering, are that collaboration, consensus building, democratic values, are those more hallmarks of a women's group, women's leadership?
I hate to say yes, but in a sense, I think it is. I think women are very used to working collaboratively. Again, because we've often been volunteers. That's the way we've become engaged in our community. Sometimes it's through our schools, with our children. Sometimes it's some other motivator. But in any case, because we've been volunteers and we've been on the ground, I think we tend to work well with each other and appreciate that. And then the other wonderful thing about this is that this organization is made up of so many women who have been engaged with nonprofits in our community. They come in with so much knowledge. One of the things that we see on the grants committee is that we have people there who know one area of nonprofits or 2 or 3 specific organizations and can add some texture to to what we're looking at. It's and we do have, of course, not a terribly limited focus, but we do have focus. We basically have 4 areas of impact that we want to make: arts and culture, education, the environment, and health and human services. And of course, it's very difficult not to know that health and human services is going to often rise to the top, as it particularly did in 2020, for example.
Sure.
And we have the flexibility that we can choose to do that. We really try very hard. Originally, it was very difficult to fund across all of those topic areas. It's become easier as we have more grants and more possibilities. But those are our areas of impact. And along with our geographic impact, very important. And that I want to go back to the geographic impact because it seems perhaps somewhat limiting, but it means that our members, who are, I would call, educated generalists, have real opportunity to know the organizations, to know where needs are in our community. It's not a question there aren't wonderful needs that we would love to help in other places, but this particular organization focuses on our local community, and we really want to be as available to our local nonprofits because of that, because we really know that a lot of our problems start at home.
Beautifully put. Well, one more time, I'm here with Mary Jean Levin, who is president of the Roanoke Women's Foundation, who has just elucidated the reasons why the Roanoke Women's Foundation is so successful, because it's basically run by women.
Well, you're very kind.
Well, no.
I know there are wonderful women in this organization, and they would appreciate that. But we are gender equal in terms of our appreciation of people in our community.
Understood, but I mean, having been a part of various organizations, I would say that when it comes to collaboration and consensus building, and again, democratic values, a Roanoke Men's Foundation I could see becoming very ego-driven and undemocratic. I mean, sadly. So I say that being the father of 3 daughters, these are values that I want them to develop more of. So anyway, so I just applaud all the work that the Roanoke Women's Foundation does. And I hope that you have a wonderful and successful year ahead, with wonderful grant opportunities that come before you, and that you eclipse that 200 member number so that you can hit that $400,000 mark this year.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly hoping so as well. But what we will for sure meet this year is over $5 million donated in the community. Wow. Because we're so close to it now that there's no question that we're not going to do that this year. Yeah,
so 19 years, $5 million. Again, there's no more impactful funding organization in the Roanoke Valley than the Roanoke Women's Foundation.
And another part of it, Michael, is that our gift often proves to leverage other gifts.
Right.
The community, because again, it's local, the community knows who we are, knows what we do, knows a little bit about our process, although it's complicated enough that everybody doesn't know it in detail, and I hope I've been able to illuminate a little bit of that. But they know that the process is seriously undertaken. And so when we give a substantial grant to an organization, they have something that they can take to somebody else and say, well, we got a Women's Foundation grant. Yeah. We still need an additional amount to make this happen, but here we are with this.
Yeah, or we have this other need that we want to be fulfilled.
And it definitely gives credibility to the organization and to the project or program that that we're funding. And that's a value we cherish as well.
Right, and any nonprofit should cherish as well. Yes, it's the funding that's needed, but being able to hold up that stamp of approval from the Roanoke Women's Foundation is huge. So thank you.
Well, we certainly hope so. And the thing we keep telling our organizations is when you've made it to phase 2, there is not a bad organization in there. There is nothing in there that wouldn't be a wonderful asset for our community.
Having made it to phase 2 twice, I would like to concur with that.
You take credit for that, Michael. Yes, no, absolutely. We really feel that. And it's often painful to make our individual votes. Counting those, trying to weigh one against another is just so hard to do.
Yeah, right.
And it's hard sometimes for us to know exactly what other members have been motivated by, but we know that they're good. We know that there are good organizations that need us. We want things that will make a difference. We want to see our money. We don't fund endowments. We don't fund long-term. We want usually to have our money used within a year or two. And but we're try to be very generous when people come up against problems that mean that something can't be accomplished in that 2-year period. So that we do ask organizations to come back to us to explain, and but it takes probably 2 sentences to explain it, and we'll say, yep, that's absolutely same kind of thing we wanted you to do and you were trying to do, and we understand why it's been delayed. So we really do try to be flexible. We really want to be partners with the organizations. We don't want to be we're not looking to design the projects for them. We know that they're so good at doing that. But we love to work with them in partnership, and we love also seeing sometimes where multiple organizations are trying to address the same thing, and we sometimes are able to connect them with each other and say, you know, this organization is also working on this, but from a slightly different angle, and maybe you should get together a little more.
Yep.
That's not as though we're not the experts. That's again what I would say, educated generalists.
Well, Mary Jean Levin, president of Roanoke Women's Foundation, thanks so much.
Thank you, Michael. This was a wonderful opportunity.
The Roanoke Women's Foundation is hosting an informational session on Thursday, February 23rd at 5:30 p.m. at St. John's Episcopal Church in Roanoke for all nonprofits that are interested in applying for grant funding this year. More at roanokewomen'sfoundation.org. Speaking of websites, stay connected with Buzz throughout the week on our website, buzzforgood.com. That's buzz, B-U-Z-Z, 4, good.com, as well as our social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok, all at Buzz for Good. Now, from the Roanoke Valley to the New River Valley, we continue our exploration of women who care by featuring my conversation with Alexa Casey, co-founder of 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley.
It is my honor to welcome to Buzz for Good, Alexa Casey, who is a founding member of 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley. Alexa, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate being here.
Well, let me thank you because your organization was very generous in being an underwriting sponsor of an upcoming episode of Buzz, our TV show, that we are going to feature literacy volunteers of the New River Valley. And we are so excited about this opportunity to work with a great organization, which would not have been possible without your organization. So thanks so much.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that was exciting. Definitely exciting. So it always is. So,
well, let's rewind in time a little bit for those who do not know about 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley. The name kind of implies what your organization does, but why don't you share it with us?
well, it is an organization that is mostly in the United States, but it is basically there. You can find different international sites. And I discovered it. I was in Ohio, and I stopped by a friend's house, and she had just returned from 100 Plus Women Who Care meeting, and she told me about it, and I thought, wow, that makes so much sense. And so basically what it is that you have women, and you're trying to get 100 plus women who all commit to donating $100 each quarter. And when they donate those that $100 each quarter, there are 3 different groups that will present, 3 different nonprofits in the area. And after a 5-minute presentation, the women will then hear, will be able to ask questions of each organization. And then after that Q&A is over with, then the women vote. And then whoever gets the most votes basically wins the entire prize. So each $100 from each woman will go to that one organization. And it all happens in an hour too. So it's a
Wow.
kind of,
Yeah.
so we've been doing that since the beginning. So
Okay. And when was the beginning?
So we had the very beginning was back in about 2014, and at that time, after I was visiting my friend she was in Yellow Springs, Ohio, I came back, and another friend of mine, Beth Parker, who was also a founder, I told her about the idea, and she really liked the idea. So both of us started to work on it, and we managed to have about three different places that we donated to. But one of the things that we were having trouble with was getting enough women. And we were trying to adjust guidelines, because in most of the groups it's $100 per woman. And I thought, well, maybe we adjust it and change it to 25, 50. So anyway, we tried to kind of hack the system, thinking that something we could do to make it make it work.
Sure.
But none of that worked. So then Sarah came to town, and Sarah Black was the other co-founder. She was involved in another group also in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. They had 220 women, and in running that organization, they kept a pretty tight ship in terms of how to design it. There wasn't a lot of tweaking, shifting. It was pretty much each woman for each quarter donates $100. You make a 2-year commitment to being part of the group, and so that's whoever the group votes for. That's where you send your money to. So after Sarah joined, then we basically, that's when things got going, because there definitely needs to be a very strict kind of structure to it, which made all the difference. So our first one with Sarah was the Children's Museum of Blacksburg, which is now the Wonder Universe, and that was back in April 2016.
Yeah. So the idea is you get at least 100 women who each agree to donate $100 per quarter. So 4 times a year, $400. And out of that, if my math skills are correct, the goal is to award 4 $10,000 grants over the course of a year.
Right, each year. So
lovely, lovely. Let me ask you this: why women?
Well, it's interesting. Again, I ran into my friend who was, that's the group that she was involved in. I checked it out. I think the group actually started in Michigan, and then that's kind of just followed suit with that. So I can't say that I know why just women. We did at one point have some men that were really interested and wanted, were interested, and we're looking at starting their own. And they kind of sat in on some of the sessions that we had. And I think they tried, but it never really got going. But I don't know that we would have turned away men to be part of it, but it never happened. I don't know that we got anyone to say, hey, could I join your group?
Right.
That just didn't happen. So
the name kind of implies that it's for women only.
Right. No one's like, that's good. I don't want to be part of that.
Well,
but they did try. They made a valiant effort to try to do 100 plus men who care. But I think they only got to about 15, if I recall.
Well, I wonder, what is it about the fact that it's a group of women that makes this work, whereas obviously 100 plus men who care didn't work?
Well, I think I think that there's the importance of a sense of community and working together, and the importance of that. I think there's a lot of kind of fellowship with the women, and the importance of kind of figuring out ways to work as a team. So I think that for me, that seems to be what really works. And it's also very, I find it to be very clear cut, and just a little bit of effort makes a big difference. And I think there's a lot of people attracted to that.
Yeah.
The meetings are always, with COVID, we had to switch to online. We missed one meeting where we didn't have it at all, but then the next time we were supposed to meet, we ended up setting up Zoom. And so we met for Zoom for quite a bit. Now, since, we started that, we're actually doing both. So our meetings were incorporating the Zoom along with a live meeting.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know from my experience being, there with y'all, it was such a congenial, collaborative, space where, everyone's voice was heard. Everyone, really wanted consensus building. Everyone had a voice. And I'm, as having worked for women and with women and being the father of 3 women, see those as being more, I guess, women-oriented traits and characteristics and values, which I think men could certainly learn from.
Yeah. It's funny. I have some close male friends, and I asked them about, hey, would you ever consider doing something like this? And they're like, no way, I would never do that.
Mm.
And they would never really able to tell me why they wouldn't,
Yeah.
they wouldn't kind of, they would imagine themselves doing something like that. But they just, yeah,
I think
I
there's
found
some,
that interesting.
yeah, I think there's more ego involved with a group of men.
Hmm.
I think there's more of a, kind of a chain of command where there's,
Hmm.
it's not all, you know, democratic. It's, there, someone wants to be in charge, and the whole alphas
Yeah.
and all that. Just, I
Hmm.
don't know. It's not as collaborative kind of an atmosphere.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That might have been it. And
Yeah.
it was, I
Well,
know it was, yeah, that might have been it, but it's definitely a very, it's a very strong community.
indeed, indeed. Well, once again, here on Bus for Good, I'm joined by Alexa Casey, who is a founder of 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley, a giving circle comprised of women who every year, 4 times a year, will donate $100 towards a nonprofit, so that deserving nonprofit, through a competition of sorts, will receive $10,000 4 times a year. So, and Buzz for Good was fortunate, in partnership with the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke, to recently be one of those recipients. And we're going to use that to produce an episode on the literacy volunteers of the New River Valley.
And
Describe the,
that was your first, and that was, I'm sorry, that was your first time out too. Now,
it was, yeah.
There's a lot of groups that have to come multiple times
Well,
before they even get chosen, right?
yeah.
So,
Well, and that's what I
um,
want to talk about. Next is, describe the process of how it works for a group to get considered and then chosen.
So first of all, before you get out of the gate, it has to be a nonprofit, a registered nonprofit. So that is absolutely necessary. We also are looking at any work that's done in the New River Valley. So any kind of, let's say, even for some of those larger organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters, if they came and they weren't able to show that they were going to actually have a project, that the monies themselves were going to be used for a project in the New River Valley, then they would not be someone that that would even be a participant in it.
Right.
We also look at groups that have presented before and groups that have not presented before. So you notice that we generally have two buckets. So the one bucket is groups that have never presented, and then ones that have, but maybe they haven't received it. Then once we pick three, we pick basically two from the new folks, and then one from the older folks that have already presented, and then whatever order they're picked, that's who starts and does the presentation. They have 5 minutes to do their presentation, and then we hear all of the 5 minutes. We hear from all the organizations, and then after that, we share more about the organizations themselves. So there's a lot of questions that come up. Now, that
Yes.
particular night, there weren't that many, but there are some times where there's a lot of questions and a lot of details. And then the women will ask questions. We let that go as long as it needs to go. That is something that we want to make sure that people have all their questions answered. The good thing about that too is that you don't have to be the member. And let me back up. Another important thing is that you have to be a member. So you have to be someone who is a contributing member
Right.
to be able to bring the nonprofit into our system.
Yeah,
So it's not
I
just,
couldn't just
yeah.
apply. I had to find someone who was actually a member of the organization. And we were very fortunate because we had a relationship with Debbie Sherman Lee, who was a member of your organization, because she's also on the board of the Christiansburg Institute. And we had produced a Buzz episode on the Christiansburg Institute back in 2021. And thankfully, she believed so strongly in what we did that she was willing to nominate us in front of your group. But even then, I wasn't allowed to speak. She was the one who had to speak on our behalf, which I think goes to the need for your members to feel passionate about a particular cause.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that's the challenge. So even if you knew somebody and they didn't know really what you were doing, how you speak about it, how you share on it is important. The story, as you know, Michael, the story is important.
Yeah.
And as a person presents and shares their excitement about what's happening, that makes all the difference. So
Well,
mhm.
again, joined here on Buzz for Good by Alexa Casey, founding member of 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley, a giving circle. And, looking back over your time with the organization, has there been a particular highlight or two for you personally?
Oh yeah, there's been plenty, but I'll try to kind of focus on a couple of them. Valley Interfaith Childcare was one, and that was one. She came multiple times, and she finally was able to get it. But that was one that was just a fun one.
Mhm.
We also had um, the Woodchucks, which I don't know if you're familiar with them or
No,
not, but
I'm not.
okay, so it's an organization here that basically they get firewood for people that are in need, and they needed a new truck. So there was inmate family assistance of the NRV. I think
Yeah.
they came, it was their first time, and they got it like the first time. So another exciting one was the beans and rice. You hate to kind of identify some of them because they're all, it was all great recipients. But beans and rice, they have a mobile food truck, and so that helped, with some of their work with that too. So, and what's nice too is that we have the organizations come back and tell us more about their project and what's happening. So while we're actually counting the votes and trying to get a sense of kind of where things are at, then we get to hear from the others and kind of and what they're up to. So
Don't you just love
um,
nonprofits? I mean,
yeah, yeah.
just in the course of your last 2 minutes of talking, you mentioned Beans and Rice, you mentioned Valley Interfaith Childcare, Woodchuck, Wonder Universe.
Right.
I mean, completely different missions, each of them, and yet they're
Right.
all bound by this, nonprofit umbrella that is whose sole missions are to enhance the quality of life in so many areas of where we live. It's wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And they would not be able to exist without the support of organizations like 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley. So thank you for making that happen. For anyone who wants to find out more about your organization and perhaps starting a giving circle similar to that in their community, what would they need to do?
Well, we have a website, so it's 100 women who care nrv.com. So 100 women who care nrv.com. And we have everything about, we have listed all the recipients. We also have when our next meeting is, and if you want a t-shirt, all of that, and gives a little bit more about each donation. You can certainly sign up there and find out how to get in touch with us. Our phone numbers are on there, and our information's on there. And there's also forms. We ask people to fill out a commitment form. If you're going to join us, if you're an organization, we also have forms on there to give us a little bit more information about what your organization does. And again, you would have to be a member as well. So we don't, like you said earlier, we don't just accept organizations unless you're a member. So but I highly recommend it. It makes sense. I think everyone that's part of our group feels very it feels like it makes a difference. Like if they gave $100 to an organization, it's a very different feeling than when you give it with a whole group of women. So you're not giving just your 100, you're giving $10,000 to an organization, and that feels that feels very special and very just very meaningful. So we are always looking for anyone to be a part of our group. And again, what I'm amazed by, and you kind of referenced it, there's so many different groups out there, and
Mhm.
I'm always surprised after you think you know all of them, there's still more that you haven't heard of before.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about this too. The other thing that's, I think, one more thing, and I could keep,
Yeah.
obviously you can tell I can keep talking about this, that that the women, they're moved by all of the stories. Sometimes it's super difficult to know, oh my gosh, I want to vote for all of them. But obviously at the end of the time, there's only one that can win. We did have a tie once, and we did end up splitting it because we had a
Mm.
tie.
Wow.
But generally, and that worked out fine. They were fine with it because they were both dealing with senior care, and they both felt that each organization, they just managed to kind of work it out that way. So but generally there's only one winner. But what I've seen a lot of women do is they'll still give money to some of the other organizations that show up. The
Mm.
individuals will just want to still give to the organizations that did not get chosen. So that's always very heartwarming as well. So
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to the name of your organization, Women Who Care. And
mhm.
regardless of the number, that's what is needed most in creating a giving circle like this. Is you just got to
Mhm.
care. And if you do, then everything else is just logistics. Then you can figure that
Right.
out.
Right,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
well,
Yeah, definitely. So, but we're making a difference. We have been around, since 2014. And that's, and I'll say 2016, the official, when it actually started working. So we're just really proud of the work that we're doing, and we look, forward to doing more.
well, as a beneficiary of 100 plus women who care NRV, as well as just someone who is obviously, concerned about the state of nonprofits in our community, I want to thank you for all the work that you guys are doing. And again, pleasure to have Alexa Casey here on Buzz for Good, talking about 100 plus women who care in New River Valley. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate you interviewing me and learning more about it. I appreciate the time.
Many thanks again to 100 Plus Women Who Care New River Valley for its recent grant to the American Advertising Federation of Roanoke, which will underwrite production costs of our new Buzz TV show featuring literacy volunteers of the New River Valley. Many thanks also to the Roanoke Women's Foundation for its nearly $400,000 each year in support of so many worthwhile nonprofit causes. So whether you are a woman or a man, and men, we've got a lot of catching up to do, we hope that you take a moment this week to be a buzz for good in your community. And we will see you back here next time on Buzz for Good.